My name is Nora Calder, and I'm 29. Digital marketing trains you to read signals through noise, open rates at 3 a.m., sentiment spikes, the way a campaign looks healthy until a single metric betrays it. Love has metrics too. You just learn to ignore them when the headline is hope. My boyfriend, Adrian Cole, and I had been together 2 years. Not perfect, but threaded into a rhythm. Groceries on Sundays, a series we never finished, a toothbrush that lived at my sink so long it felt like a roommate. He said I over-optimized feelings. I said he undercommitted schedules. Somehow we met in the middle. The night it cracked was supposed to be easy. He texted, "Come meet us. Old college crew at Palace Bar, 8 p.m." I walked into neon and bass and a table crowded with 7, maybe 8 of his friends. The kind of group where laughter lands like darts and everyone pretends it doesn't sting. Adrian lifted a hand in a wave. No stand-up, no hello kiss, just a gesture like he was flagging a server. I took the empty chair beside him and ordered something on the rocks. The conversation spun around a Miami trip they'd taken last year. I remembered the photos, him tan and unbothered, captions about recharging. He'd called it a guy's weekend. I'd believed him because trust is a habit. Then Melissa, the loud one with the bright smile, turned toward me. "So, Nora, when are you finally meeting Adrian's parents? 2 years feels pretty serious, right?" I opened my mouth to say something light. Soon, I hope. Adrian laughed first. Not the warm laugh I knew. A dismissive, razor-clean sound that cut the air. "You really think I'd ever introduce her to my parents?" The table stilled. Someone reached for a phone that didn't buzz. Across from me, a guy rearranged his face into polite blankness. Melissa's smile faltered, then rolled on like a wave forced to keep moving. I felt heat crawl up my throat. The old reflex, minimize the damage, laugh along, stay cool, rose to the surface and died there. I studied Adrian's face. The curve of his smirk said audience. The tilt of his head said safe. He thought I'd take it. I didn't. I set a 20 beside my drink, gave him a small, precise smile, the kind you give a puzzle once you've seen the corner piece, and said, "Don't worry, you won't have to." Then I stood and walked out. No raised voice, no performance. Just the quiet of shoes on tile and the relief of a door that still knew how to open. I drove home on autopilot. My hands shook on the wheel, not from anger, but from the sudden recalibration of truth. 2 years of building a future with someone who'd never pictured me in it. I waited for the apology text. It didn't come. The silence stretched until 11:47 p.m. when my phone buzzed. Not Adrian. Lauren Park. We'd always gotten along. His friend, yes, but the reasonable one. The person who returned, borrowed things, and didn't confuse snark with personality. "Hey, I need to tell you something. Can you call?" My stomach bottomed out. I hit dial. She picked up on the first ring. Her voice was tight, like it was holding breath. "I'm sorry about tonight," she said. There's no excuse. I told him in the parking lot he was cruel. But there's more, and I can't keep quiet." The room tilted. "Adrian's been seeing someone," she said softly, "for about 6 months." Silence opened like an elevator shaft. "Who?" "Jessica Vale, his ex. They reconnected at some networking event in April. He told us you two were basically over waiting out the lease, is what he said. I thought you knew. Tonight made it clear you didn't, and I'm not okay being complicit." I sat very still, like movement would shatter whatever was left. 6 months. The missing Saturdays. The late strategy meetings. The photo from a lakeshore he'd tagged as client retreat. "Thank you," I heard myself say. It sounded like someone else. "Nora, he's been bragging," Lauren whispered, angry now, saying you're too nice to make a fuss. I couldn't listen to that and pretend loyalty. After we hung up, I stared at the dark until it grew edges. My life rearranged itself into 2 folders, before and after. When adrenaline finally released me, something quieter took its place, something with a spine. I washed my face. I packed away the mug he always reached for. Then I did what my job trained me to do. I opened notes and started a list. Lease, only in my name, confirm with landlord. Devices, shared family cloud. Access? His idea to save money, remember. Meet. If he reaches out, choose a neutral spot. Public, bright, early. Exit, timeline for him to pack. Keys returned. The apartment hummed, the way places do after you say the quiet part out loud. On the counter, his spare key glinted under the stove light like a witness. My phone lit again. Adrian at last. Can we talk tomorrow? You overreacted. It was a joke. I stared at the word joke until it blurred. Then I typed, Coffee at Brood Awakening, 2 p.m. He replied instantly, Thank you. I love you. I looked at those 3 words as if they belonged to someone else's language. Then I set the phone face down and turned off the lamp. In the dark, I practiced the calm I would need to end a life I thought I wanted. Morning sunlight always looks honest, like it's trying to remind you what's real. That's how it felt the next day. Too bright, too sharp, like the truth itself had opened the blinds. By noon, my hands had stopped shaking. The hurt had calcified into something colder. Clarity. I'd spent the night listing everything that now made sense. Missed calls labeled work, weekends with the guys, the sudden surge of gym selfies. Every red flag I'd folded into excuses was now waving in formation. At 2 p.m., I drove to Brood Awakening, our usual cafe. Adrian arrived 15 minutes late, of course. That was part of his charm, or what I used to call charm, back when I mistook inconsiderate for effortless. He wore the shirt I bought him for his birthday, sleeves rolled, smile rehearsed. He sat across from me, leaning in with his usual soft-voiced apology. Hey, he said, reaching for my hand. Last night was stupid. I was drunk and showing off. You know I didn't mean it. I moved my hand before he touched it. Tell me about Jessica. His face froze like a computer screen buffering. Who? I tilted my head, studying him the way I study bad copy, how the tone wobbles when the writer's lying. Your ex, the one you've been seeing for 6 months. The color drained from his face. Who told you that? Does it matter? He ran a hand through his hair, laughing nervously. It's not what you think. I actually laughed then. You don't even know what I think, Adrian. He opened his mouth, fumbling for a defense. That's when I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. Maybe these will help you remember. He hesitated, then tapped the screen. Photos filled the display. Him and Jessica at a lake house, at restaurants, in a hotel room with rose petals on the bed. His hand around her waist, her head on his shoulder, the kind of smile that once belonged to me. His mouth went dry. How did you... Shared iCloud, I said. Your idea to save money. Your password was still saved on my laptop. He blinked, stunned, the way people look when they realize they've handed you the matchbook that lit their own fire. I didn't mean for this to happen, he stammered. She reached out, we just talked at first, and it just happened. It just happened, I repeated slowly. For half a year? She's part of my past, Nora. You know how complicated that can be. Complicated as running into an ex at the grocery store, I said. This was deliberate. He started crying then, real tears, the panicked kind that come when charm stops working. Please, don't do this. You're stable, you're good for me, I just got lost. That word, stable, cut deeper than any confession. I wasn't a person to him. I was furniture, reliable, convenient. You don't get to use me as your emotional layover, I said quietly. Pack your things. The lease is in my name. His head snapped up. Wait, what? I already talked to the landlord. You're not on the contract. You'll have 3 days to move out. I'll stay at a friend's until you're gone. He reached across the table, desperate now. You can't just... I can, I said, standing. And I am. He followed me outside, voice cracking. Nora, please, I can end it with her. I'll do therapy, whatever you want. I stopped on the sidewalk, turned to face him. You don't get to fix the roof after you've burned down the house. The traffic noise swallowed the silence that followed. I walked away before he could answer. That night, I texted Lauren. He knows. It's done. She replied instantly, I'm proud of you. He's furious, but you did the right thing. I didn't feel proud, just hollow. The kind of emptiness that follows when adrenaline leaves and reality moves in. I spent the next few hours doing something mindless. Laundry, dishes, anything that sounded like normal life. Every time I passed the coffee table, my phone lit up again. Adrian, you're vindictive. Adrian, you're throwing away everything we built. Adrian, I made one mistake. I didn't respond. Instead, I created a folder on my phone labeled Evidence, Closure, and saved the screenshots there. Not for revenge, just for the record. At midnight, the notifications stopped. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the fridge. I looked around at the space we'd shared, the throw blanket he never folded, the dent in the sofa where he always sat, the empty spot on the wall where our first photo had hung. Funny how absence has a shape. I walked over to the framed photo still standing on the bookshelf, our first anniversary dinner, both of us smiling at something off camera. I stared at it for a moment, then turned it face down. It wasn't anger, it was relief. Relief that I finally stopped mistaking cruelty for complexity. Relief that the truth, however ugly, was finally mine. Tomorrow he'd start moving out. I knew he'd make a scene, dramatic apologies, maybe even guilt-tripping through mutual friends. But it didn't matter. I'd already decided he could take whatever he wanted, except my peace. The next 72 hours felt like a movie I didn't remember auditioning for. Boxes stacked, tempers leaking through text messages, the sound of drawers slamming from behind a closed bedroom door. Lauren helped. She showed up with coffee and a quiet competence that made it easier to breathe. "He's packing," she said, glancing toward the hall. "He's angry, but I think he's embarrassed more than anything." "I'm fine with that," I said, taping another box. "Embarrassment is cheaper than empathy." By the second day, his things were gone. Sneakers, weights, the collection of graphic tees he swore were vintage. The silence he left behind was heavier than the furniture. Lauren texted later that night. "He's out. He took the coffee maker." I wrote back. "He can keep it. I prefer tea now." 3 days. 2 years of shared life condensed into cardboard and resentment. I slept in my own bed that night and dreamed of nothing. 2 weeks passed before the next twist. Lauren called while I was in the grocery store. "Are you sitting down?" she asked, her tone half shocked, half satisfied. "Not yet, but I can lean on the cart." "Adrian got dumped." I blinked. "By Jessica?" "Yep. Apparently, she didn't know he was still living with you until after you confronted him. When she found out, she lost it. Called him a liar and blocked him on everything." A laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "That was fast." "There's more." Lauren's voice softened. "He tried to go home to his parents' place for a while. They told him no." "What?" "They adored you, Nora. They thought you were the one. When they heard about the cheating, his mom told him he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. His dad said, and I quote, 'You reap what you plant.'" I stood in the produce aisle, holding a head of lettuce, feeling an odd mix of justice and sadness. It wasn't gloating, it was gravity. The universe leveling itself. "I don't know what to feel," I admitted. "Proud," Lauren said. "You didn't let him gaslight you into silence." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe just done." That night, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine and thought about all the tiny ways people lose each other, not through big betrayals at first, but through micro choices. Lies wrapped as omissions, pride disguised as charm. For months, Adrian had been performing the role of a man in love. I'd been performing the role of someone who believed him. Maybe we both deserved an award for realism. Later, curiosity got the better of me. I typed Jessica's name into Instagram. Her profile was public again. Dozens of new posts about self-discovery, inspirational quotes about learning from heartbreak, filtered selfies with captions like, "Growth is painful but necessary." It would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. Then, just before midnight, a new message popped up. Not from Adrian, from Jessica. "Jessica, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of that." "Jessica, I know it doesn't mean much, but I wish I'd realized sooner what kind of person he is." I stared at the words for a while, then I typed, "Me, you both showed me who you are. That's all the clarity I needed." And I hit send. The next morning, I felt lighter. Closure doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just a calm inbox and an empty apartment that finally feels like yours again. A week later, Lauren texted me one last update. "Lauren, he's trying to reach out to you through mutuals." Me. "Let him try. The number's the same, but the person isn't." That night, I walked into my bedroom, opened the window, and let the cold air in. The city sounded alive again. Cars, laughter, fragments of other people's stories moving on without me. I realized then that heartbreak isn't an ending. It's a renovation, messy, loud, and necessary. And if Adrian ever wondered whether I missed him, the answer was simple. I missed the person I thought he was, not the man who existed. By morning, I deleted his number for good. It's been 3 months since that night at the bar, long enough for silence to turn from punishment into peace. The first few weeks were strange. My phone stayed too still. The apartment sounded too big. I caught myself expecting his keys in the door, his shoes by the mat, his hum in the kitchen. But ghosts only haunt you if you leave the door open. So I closed it, literally. I changed the locks, bought new sheets, painted one wall a deep sage green because I could. Every stroke felt like reclaiming oxygen. Lauren visited often. We'd sit on the balcony with coffee and laugh about things that used to feel impossible to survive. "You know," she said once, "you didn't just lose a boyfriend, you lost an illusion." "I think I'm better at spotting those now," I replied. She smiled. "Good. Because illusions are expensive. By December, the ache had dulled into something useful, memory with sharp edges filed down. I started sleeping through the night again, stopped flinching when my phone buzzed. Then one morning it buzzed for real. A new text. Adrian, no hard feelings? Maybe we can grab coffee, talk like adults. I read it once, twice. The audacity was almost admirable. I didn't reply. I didn't even screenshot it. I just deleted it the same way you clear out spam. Automatic, emotionless, necessary. An hour later, another message arrived. This time from an unknown number. Unknown. Hey, this is Caleb Myers. We don't know each other, but I dated Jessica before she got back with Adrian. Unknown. Just thought you should know she was still seeing me while she was with him. Guess he wasn't her only networking connection. I stared at the message, then laughed. Quiet, incredulous laughter that felt like exorcism. The universe didn't just balance the scales. It wrote an epilogue. Me. Thanks for the info, Caleb. I'm not surprised. Good luck out there. Then I blocked that number too. I realized something then. Closure isn't about getting answers. It's about not needing them anymore. That evening, I met someone new. Evan Rhodes, a financial analyst I'd met through a client project. He had that kind of calm that doesn't need to prove itself. Steady voice, thoughtful pauses. On our second date, while splitting dessert, he asked, "So, when do I get to meet your friends? I want to know the people who matter to you." I smiled, "Whenever you want." It hit me later, driving home, how poetic that question was. Adrian's story had started with a public humiliation over that exact thing, being deemed unworthy of belonging. This time, the invitation came naturally. No performance, no shame. But this wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about remembering who I was before I learned to measure my worth through someone else's validation. Some nights I still think about that bar, the laughter, the frozen faces, the moment everything fractured in public view. But instead of pain, I feel gratitude, because that humiliation became the blueprint for my boundaries. I don't stalk his social media. I don't wonder if he's sorry. Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. Either way, it doesn't matter. Here's what I've learned. You can't love someone into decency. Trust doesn't need proof until it does. The person who humiliates you once will always try to rewrite it as a joke. And most importantly, leaving isn't losing. It's choosing. Last week, I deleted the folder labeled Evidence, Closure. Not out of forgiveness, out of finality. Now, every morning, I open my balcony door, breathe in the city air, and remind myself that peace isn't quiet because it's empty. It's quiet because it's earned. If Adrian ever wonders how I moved on so completely, I hope someone tells him this. I didn't destroy him. I just stopped letting him destroy me.